I would like to welcome everyone. Before I get started, I just wanted to say a quick thank you to Julie Howard and the Ocean City Library. They're always so wonderful about hosting me and having me do presentations, and I'm always glad to be here. So thank you to the Ocean City Library. My name is Christine Zellers, and I'm with Rutgers Cooperative Extension of Cape May County, and I am the Family and Community Health Sciences educator for Cape May County. And I just want to give you a little bit of background information for those of you who may not be familiar. Rutgers Cooperative Extension is an equal opportunity university. Rutgers Cooperative Extension is part of the university, Rutgers, New Jersey Agricultural Experiment Station. And Rutgers is a land grant university, meaning it has cooperative extension services throughout New Jersey to support the community with educational information that is scientifically research-based. Rutgers Cooperative Extension is a partnership between the Board of County Commissioners, Rutgers, the State University of New Jersey, and the USDA's National Institute of Food and Agriculture. And we now have faculty or staff in 21 of the 21 New Jersey counties to do outreach to the communities of New Jersey. We are composed of 3 different departments, including agriculture and natural resources, 4-H youth development, and family and community health sciences, or FCHS, which is my department. And in FCHS, we provide outreach in New Jersey and beyond on topics related to nutrition, chronic disease prevention, food safety, and overall wellness. I'm going to give you our websites at a point at the end here, as well as our social media handles, and we hope that you'll check us out online. We always have on the Cape May County, as well as the statewide FCHS pages, the information on upcoming webinars, other things going on. We do offer, with our department, we offer Wellness Wednesday every week, which if you haven't joined us for one of those yet, please do. We have people from as far away as Guam getting on those calls. And we have a lot of really interesting and important topics regarding wellness and health. And if you see a topic that you're interested in, you can go to our website and look at the recording if it's already been presented and it's a topic area you'd like to hear about. I have 3 objectives for this evening. We're going to be talking about eating seasonally, as you probably are aware since you registered for the session. And we're going to include reasons for eating seasonally with information on the health benefits, the cost effect of purchasing seasonal food, and tips on buying local produce. Next, we're going to talk about spicing up seasonal food with healthy ways to add flavors to the season. And then finally, we're going to talk about seasonal food and preparation of it. And I'm going to focus, because it's fall, I'll focus on a fall area for that. Historically, food consumption habits followed what was local and seasonal because that's all there were. So people didn't really have different stores to go to. They didn't have, 5 or 6 different grocery stores right around them to be able to choose pineapples in New Jersey in the middle of winter in January, say. But rather they were really limited to what they had access to locally or what they grew and harvested each year. And that what they grew and harvested had to reach through the season. The convenience of modern day harvesting and modern day food supply has really allowed us to get away from foods that are grown locally and seasonally. It has become much more popular recently. You'll see the local signs and things like that, but even seasonally isn't that produced because, like I said, we can have strawberries in January, even though they're not grown here in New Jersey in January. Being able to eat seasonal really can have a lot of health benefits as well. And so we're going to talk about those this evening to start. So food that is in season is going to be fresher. So that's a really good reason. Why do we want to eat seasonally? What's the reason behind it? I know a lot of people know the reasons for eating local. It's good for the environment. It's good for the economy. It supports the local farmers and things like that. And it's fresher. But same with eating seasonally. Food that's grown in season is going to be fresher, and therefore it's going to taste better. And season foods will also, we're going to see further in the presentation, they have properties to keep us healthy during those specific seasons, from immunity fighting nutrients to cooling effects on the body. And finally, if it's in season, it's more likely to be cost effective. That's because it's easier for the grocery store to get it. It's plentiful during that time, so there's a lot of it. And it hasn't been hauled all the way across the country, which not only adds more to the cost, but it also can impact the environment as well. So there's some good reasons to eat seasonally. During the fall, so I'm going to cover all the different seasons, but during the fall season, items like butternut squash, apples, and leafy greens are in season. And we know the old saying, an apple a day keeps the doctor away, but these fruits and vegetables really do provide many beneficial vitamins and minerals. For instance, leafy greens like kale and arugula are packed with vitamins and minerals. Kale contains vitamin C, it has A and vitamin K, also B6, as well as magnesium, calcium, copper, and potassium. It even has some protein in it. So it has a lot of different things to make our bodies healthy. These nutrients support our immune system as well as we move into the cooler months. So as it's starting to get cooler out, we're more likely to maybe get sick from a cold or the flu or something like that. These things are vitamins and minerals that we are getting from these fall harvests are helping us to move our immunity to a higher level by consuming them. Pumpkin has made a really big splash lately in the fall. You go on to social media and there's hashtag pumpkin spice latte or pumpkin spice latte season. And while it's true that pumpkin spice latte is yummy this time of season in the cool weather, it's really not as healthy of an option as we want to choose. It's probably pretty sugary. So instead of having and probably doesn't have any pumpkin, I know sometimes the kids are surprised when I tell them that cherry soda doesn't have cherries or grape soda doesn't have grapes. Well, your pumpkin spice latte really doesn't have any pumpkin either. I'm teasing you. I know you know that, but adding real pumpkin to dishes in the fall brings out that dish's flavor, and it can be used to sweeten things like muffins. It can, make a nice hearty soup for you. And it's loaded with vitamins and minerals and like potassium. It has vitamin E in it and C and B. And it's again, I joke because of this pumpkin spice latte thing, but pumpkin is something that people don't always think to add this time of year. And it is a good seasonal vegetable to use during this time of year. Pumpkins are really good too. Those orange fruits and vegetables, they're good for your eyesight, and they, help with brain function and things like that as well. The pumpkin can be used from a can, of course, but it's usually better if you can buy it fresh, because then it's just the pumpkin that you're getting. And you can use that to roast in recipes. And I am going to share some recipes with y'all afterwards. I'll email them out to you. Much of the harvest can be eaten fresh, like the whole plant too. So for instance, to give you an example of that pumpkin again, you can eat the pulp of the pumpkin inside, but then you can also roast the seeds and eat the seeds as a snack or on top of a casserole. The seeds of a pumpkin are also going to provide you with good nutrients. They're a great snack. They have protein in them, and they also have healthy unsaturated fats in them. So they have a lot of benefit in and of themselves. All of the fall harvest fruits and veggies that I mentioned are high in fiber and phytochemicals. And phytochemicals are what give our beautiful color to our fruits and vegetables. And there's a lot of nutrients in them. Also, they're full of fiber. And it's important to have fiber in our diet. Americans are really lacking in fiber. And so it's something that we need to try to get more of. And it would stand to reason, since we're short, I say this all the time, since we don't eat enough fruits and vegetables as a nation, that's why we're short on fiber, because fruits and veggies are packed with nice fiber. So it's a good reason to eat those fall veggies, is because of the fiber in them. I'm going to put in the chat real quick. I'm going to add a link in the chat that you can click on and go to. You don't have to do it right now, but I would, if you could open it, that would be great. That is an evaluation for the presentation tonight. So if you could answer that presentation questions before the end of the presentation or sometime at the end of the presentation, I would be very thankful. And I'm also going to give you a QR code that if you want to scan it with your phone in a little bit. So let's move on to winter and the warmth of winter. So how do we stay warm in winter with fruits and vegetables? January through April, most plants in New Jersey, they're really not growing because of our weather here. So we don't have a hearty, bountiful, plentiful bunch of local produce. But way back when, in the early days before grocery stores, people would store foods like potatoes and beets that are root vegetables in what's called a root cellar. And these would give them a supply of food that would keep through the winter, because they do last a long time. And root vegetables are hardy, and although they get a bad name sometimes from being starchy vegetables, they do have a purpose because they keep us full during the winter and warm in the winter. So that's the reason it's good to eat seasonally too, is, that'll help to keep you nice and full and warm in the wintertime. You can eat white potatoes. I know that probably would be a question people ask, but obviously you want to do that in moderation because they are a very starchy vegetable. But you can eat other root vegetables like roasted carrots or sweet potatoes. Again, the orange color from those vegetables provide a rich source of vitamin K, vitamin C, potassium, magnesium, folate, phosphorus, and fiber. And beets are also another good colorful root vegetable that's great with high blood pressure, inflammation, and supports brain health. And just as another example of eating the entire, I know sometimes you get canned beets or you'll just get the end of the bulb of the beet, but if you buy the beets in its entirety, just like pumpkin, you can eat all of that. So you can eat the bulb of the beet, like I mentioned, the red part of it. And then there's the stem that you can chop up and you can eat that as well. It tastes a little bit like Swiss chard, if you've ever had that. And then also the leaves of the beet leaves can be eaten as a salad. So there are all different ways that you can really utilize the whole plant, and you can get a lot of different meals out of that and use it in a lot of different ways. So you don't have to disregard those stems on them or the leaves. You can use them to eat as well. And they're very good for you and healthy as well. The winter vegetables have turnips also is another one that supports our winter vegetable list and is a nice veggie counterpart to the root vegetables. But one thing you want to remember is a lot of times, especially with root vegetables, there's a tendency to cook them, put like a sweet potato, maybe, for example, in the winter month, you might put a lot of butter and sugar on there, brown sugar. So instead of doing that, maybe just a little bit of butter. And if you want to flavor with cinnamon or salt, a little bit of salt and some pepper. So try to make sure when you're making these root vegetables, because a lot of people don't always care for the taste. They think they're too earthy tasting. Try to make sure you're not adding a lot of fat and sugar to them, because that would kind of undo the healthy thing we're trying to do. So if possible, try to keep that fat, unhealthy fat and sugar to a minimum with your winter vegetables. All right, jumping ahead to spring. Spring has sprung. I was thinking that tonight as I was driving home. Wow, we're moving into winter here. It's getting dark earlier. But when spring does spring here in New Jersey, we have a lot of leafy greens that become readily available in our climate. And we also have asparagus. So they kind of start the season out. Mainly vegetables that can sustain a cold early start to their growth is what we start out with in the spring. Garlic and strawberries also come into season later in the spring. And both garlic and strawberries contain vitamins that help us fight congestion. We often experience this in the spring here because of allergies. And because of the vitamin C they contain, it does help us to fight off the congestion and runniness that we feel in our heads and our noses. Garlic's an excellent source of vitamin B6, and it's a good source of magnesium and selenium, as well as vitamin C, as I already said. Additionally, garlic is a good source of other minerals. It includes phosphorus, it has calcium, and it has antioxidants. It has calcium, iron, potassium, and copper. So strawberries, that's another one that I mentioned that's early-ish spring. Strawberries are really an excellent source of vitamin C. They have an antioxidant in them that's necessary for immune and skin health. They have magnesium, folate, and potassium in them. So if you notice the contents of many in-season spring vegetables, they contain the vitamin C. Like I said, that's going to help us to fight off those, colds and the natural draining we get from the allergies. It's really nature's way of keeping us healthy, in addition to providing overall health support. And I just wanted to touch on supplements a minute. A lot of people will ask me about supplements, or what supplement should I use? And what we usually do as a department is recommend eating a nice, healthy, well-balanced diet, because as you can see, all these fruits and vegetables offer a plethora of vitamins and minerals. And we know that they're more likely to be absorbed in our system, whereas supplements and vitamins, you're likely to just excrete and not hold on to. So try to eat a well-balanced diet, and it might save you some money on those vitamins as well. Summer sensations. Boy, this looks good. And a nice, beautiful, colorful picture of all those fruits and veggies. And it's really one of my favorite things about summer is that we have such a large variety here in New Jersey of fresh seasonal produce. One local summer favorite is obviously watermelons, and they're mostly water. They're about 92% water, and they give us the hydration that we need for this time of year. So they actually help to hydrate us and cool us down, again, with being in season for what we need and our bodies need. This refreshing fruit is soaked with nutrients too. Even though it has a lot of water, it does have nutrients. Each juicy bite has significant levels of vitamin A, it has B6, it has C, lots of lycopene because it's red colored, antioxidants, and amino acids. Watermelon is also an anti-inflammatory, and like I said, it provides hydration during those winter weather months. Tomatoes and peppers are also, they come into season in New Jersey in the summer, and tomatoes provide our bodies with lycopene. And lycopene is shown to have many benefits, like reducing the likelihood of certain cancers. In addition, a peer-reviewed study published in the US National Library of Medicine showed a decrease in UV ray absorption amongst subjects that had higher intakes of tomato products with higher levels of lycopene. So that's not saying go out and eat a bunch of tomatoes and skip the sunscreen. You still want to make sure you're covered with sun, you have your sunscreen. But I just think it's really interesting how, we need to have some sun protection because we're out in the sun more, the sun's stronger in this area. And it's the same time that the tomatoes are coming into season. So we're getting hydration, we're getting sun protection, and those are the things that the benefits of eating seasonally in the summertime. Now, of course, these are just a few I mentioned. I obviously couldn't go through everything that's harvested in New Jersey for fruits and vegetables, but I did give you a little peek at them. So hopefully you will, get the idea from the few that I chose. I'm sure you will. All right, so what about saving with the seasons? I mentioned early on that when we eat seasonally and locally, it could save us some money. When you purchase local produce that's in season, you're likely to save money in addition to getting the health benefits from those products. Here's an example. In blueberry season here in New Jersey in June, you can purchase blueberries 2 for $2.50 for 2 quarts. So now that they're not in season, they're running about $5 for 2 6-ounce containers. So you can see that, reduced size and not as much. So when you decide to shop for produce items, try looking at the circular for the store you shop at, or find a list of what's locally grown at the time, even if you're not in this area. And you can kind of tell what should be in season and what's going to probably cost you less money. Often the seasonal produce will be less than that not in season produce, and it's going to be fresher and it's going to be local, and it's probably going to taste better because it's fresh and local. It's certainly okay to buy canned or frozen fruits and vegetables if it's necessary for your budget. If you want to try to follow what's in season with that, you can. There's just as much nutrients in that. It is cost effective. It doesn't always have the same fresh taste. If you're going to buy canned vegetables or fruits, make sure that they're not in heavy syrup. You want to choose the option that it's not heavy syrup. And you also want to try to choose the low sodium for vegetables or rinse them off. So you get that packing substance off of them, the saline that sometimes vegetables are packed in. You also want to check the ads and compare prices for the fresh, like I said, because there could be differences in what's in and what's out, or what they have a good supply of, or something like that. So give it a whirl and check it out that way. I did want to talk a little bit about options for eating local as well, because again, that kind of coincides with being seasonal. There are a few ways that you can eat seasonally and have fresh seasonal foods at your fingertips. Growing your own garden, for instance, is one way to do that. And herbs and tomatoes are always a favorite in this area. They're usually relatively easy to grow for us. You can grow them in a planter box. Some people are growing them on their porch right now. You can grow them in just a little round porch box or regular planter, and you can also plant them in the ground. So there's a lot of options there for you to do it right in your house, even if you don't have a lot of space. My mom doesn't have very much ground covering that she could plant on, but she was able to get a pretty good harvest this year out of her container plants. So she did it that direction. It's also relaxing to garden. It's good physical activity. If you have children, they really love helping and seeing the benefits of their work. So a lot of times kids are found, it's been shown that kids, when they grow their own produce, they're more likely to eat it. So if you're trying to encourage that, maybe that's a good way to get kids eating more fruits and veggies, is to have them put their hands in the soil and make it from themselves from scratch. You can also participate in a community garden. I've worked with many schools across Southern New Jersey that have gardens for students, but the problem is in the summertime, there's nobody to maintain them. So I know some schools for a while were willing to let the families, they would tell the families, like have families sign up and they could come in and take care of the garden in the summertime, and then they could take the produce home with them. So that's both cost effective and it's helping out the local community as well as getting your fresh local produce that way. Of course, if you do that, you want to definitely check with the school and make arrangements for them to do that before you go take in their garden. And some communities also provide land or rent plots that you can use if you're in an area that doesn't have a lot of ground around your house. So you could do that. And joining a CSA is another way to get fresh local produce. So for those of you that are not familiar with CSAs, they would have like a farmer that would give like a bag of food and you pay a price for it and you go pick it up or they deliver it. So they were really popular for a while back, and some employers provided them and had them. I think they died off a little bit. I know here in our area, there's not a lot of them, but you know, it's always something worth looking into if you have a connection with a farmer and you want to try to do that. Also, farm markets are a great way to get local fresh seasonal food. Make sure when you do go to the farm market, especially early in the season, that you are getting truly local produce or seasonal produce, because sometimes the grow season hasn't really kicked in, but they want to provide, like, say, tomatoes, so they might not be local. So ask the farmer, you know, are these your tomatoes? Did you grow them locally? Are they hothouse tomatoes? So you know what you're getting and you know what you're paying for and you're getting what you want. It's always okay. And I've found it at farmers markets, usually the growers that are there, they're so eager to share recipes and, you know, great information that, you know, they're always a pleasure. I had one share with me. I'll share this recipe with you. It's real simple. Peaches, Jersey peaches, so yummy, right? Cut them in half, take the pit out and put them on the grill. So you grill them both sides, get them a little tender, take them out, and then where the hole was from that pit, sprinkle a little blue cheese on there and then drizzle a little honey. Oh my goodness, to die for. So like I said, those growers are really, they're helpful. They know their product. They, you know, they're great. So don't hesitate to ask them questions when you're trying to shop locally. Also on the local level, when people think of local, a lot of times they think of in season, like I said, and grown in the area by someone that is close by to make it healthy and sustainable. But there is no standard for being local in most places. But in New Jersey, we're really lucky because we have Jersey Fresh, which requires the grower to be certified and show that the produce was grown right here in the Garden State. So if you're trying to eat local produce in season, you want to look out for this Jersey Fresh symbol. And I know I'll make a shameless plug. Next week, we're doing a presentation, What's the Catch? New Jersey Seafood and Healthy Living, which was very popular last year. We brought it again back this year, and we are doing a information on the nutritional value of seafood, or ways to cook it, ways to prepare it, ways to shop for it, cost-effective buying for it, all those type of things. I'll give you the information at the end of the program. You're welcome to join us next week. You just have to go to our website and register. But sometimes on the seafood too, you'll see this Jersey Fresh local. So that's why I brought it up at this point. You know, you can find Jersey Fresh seafood as well in this area. So canning and preserving, I wanted to talk a little bit about this, and it's really, you know, it takes away from the seasonality to a degree, because you're canning, say, tomatoes and eating them in January when it's not the season, but it can really, it's a good way to add length to your grow season and to preserve food for your winter months, much like they did, like I said, back in the day before there was grocery stores, they would do this. So while canning will extend the life of your garden, it's obviously not going to be in season, like I said, but it's still going to give you those great nutrients from your garden or from a farm stand that you bought locally. Eating seasonally is good for us, but it makes sure that we have a well-balanced, you want to be eating seasonally, but you also want to make sure you have a well-balanced diet with that. You want to make sure you have those lean proteins, whole grains, and then a variety of fruits and vegetables. Canning is really a precise science. And if you have canned in the past, make sure that you're using USDA canning standards for the safest preservation of food. When canning, use only high quality produce. You don't want to use things that are overripe or underripe. And you want to use produce that's in season and doesn't have blemishes on it. So it's not the stuff that kind of fell to the bottom of the garden, fell off of the vine or something. You want to use the good stuff to can. Another benefit of home canning is that you also know everything that's going into your food. So there's no doubt about it. You can guarantee what's in there for yourself. Here's a couple do's and don'ts for canning and preserving, just to keep in mind. Whenever I talk about canning, I always throw this slide up. You want to make sure, again, that it's USDA, National Center for Home Preservation, or University Extension websites that you're getting these information from. These sites really stay up to date on all the latest science around preserving, and they use practices that are safe for food handling. So like I said, they're updated and they're safe food handling. Using another source could really put your family and your friends at risk, and you don't want to do that. You want to have something that's enjoyable. A lot of times different levels will change, and if you change the recipe or you get it from a blog or someplace that's altered the recipe, it could affect things like the acidity level, and that could be harmful to you and your family and make you sick. So make sure that you're using tested recipes from those .gov or edu sites. Remember to only use recipes that are coming from there too. Further, you should avoid recipes that have been handed down for generations. I know that people really, like to hand them down, but unfortunately our food supply has really changed over the years. So the way your grandmother canned something might be unhealthy for us now with the way the food supply is. And those sites do take that into consideration and that make sure that what information is being put out there is information that is accurate with the current food supply. All right, I promised that I would talk to you about getting nice flavor that's healthy for our seasonal eating. And one way to do that is with fresh herbs. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about herbs, just because I think as you're eating those different, seasonal vegetables and fruits, it's a good way to add some flavor in, mix things up a little bit. And it's a really good way to extend the produce season is by doing this. So just like when you're preserving or canning the life of the seasonal produce, you can do that with these healthy options with herbs. It's beneficial to use herbs for substitutes of salt or sugar. And an example of this would be using basil in a tomato-based dish or sauce, and that'll sweeten it up. Or you could use cumin to replace salt in a dish to make it more flavorful, but without all that sodium. Herbs really add a healthy plant-based option for taste, and it can be a great substitute for those unhealthy options. So keep them in mind. This is the QRL code that I promised you. If you take your phone out you hold it up with the, open the camera up, hold it up to that QRL code, then it will scan it and bring the questionnaire up on the screen. So you could go ahead and do that for me if you would. And if not, the link there at the bottom is the one that I put into the chat before. So as we move through the presentation, if you could at one point take that survey, I'd very much appreciate it. Really helps us to know how we're hitting our target audiences and whether or not the information we're supplying is beneficial and how we might alter or change that to better meet the needs of our communities that we work in. I also wanted to talk about when your garden becomes very plentiful at the end of the growing season, what you're going to do with those extra herbs. So you can see, they start out really tiny, and then I know right now I have tons of herbs outside. So let's talk about how to make them last a little longer so that we can add them to those seasonal vegetables and give them a little healthy kick. You can dry them, which is an option. So drying can be done in the microwave or a dehydrator. And again, look at the EDU or the .org or the extension sites to find directions on how to do that properly. You can also dry herbs in a cool, dry place by hanging them and covering them with paper bags. So you want to wash them, dry them with a paper towel, and then hang them so they're covered and they're not getting dust on them. And then after you get them dried out, you can plop them in the food processor and chop them up into like a fine powder, or you could chop them just a little bit, whichever your preference is. You can also take spices like basil and you could make a pesto. What I do, I just did it. It's funny, I think because it's been so warm, my basil was like going to seed and I cut it all back. I made my pesto cubes and now there's a big whole nother thing of basil out there. So I'm really excited that I can do this again. But what I do is I take I make the pesto, right, with the recipe, and I can send you the recipe for this. I put them into an ice cube tray and I freeze them. Then I pop them out of the ice cube tray and I put them in a freezer bag and label them. And then if I'm in hurry for, say I have a presentation like I did tonight, I need a quick dinner, I take some olive oil, put a chicken breast with a little garlic in there and just saute that. And then I put the basil pesto cube on top of the chicken and let it melt down in the oven and sprinkle a little mozzarella cheese on there. And it's a really quick, easy meal and it tastes awesome. So it's a great way to, if you want to dry the herbs or you want to put them in the pesto cubes, but try to think about ways to extend, if you're growing them in your garden, or if you're not and you just want to do it, they are selling these plants at the grocery stores now a lot of times. So you can bring them in and have them to add flavor and reduce salt. So speaking of salt, another great way to finish off the herbs at the end of the growing season is to cut the salt. So like I said before, we want to cut that salt out if we can. The CDC estimates the average American gets about 3,400 milligrams per day of sodium, but we're only supposed to get 2,300 milligrams. So we're way over the average American. If you figure it's average, I'm sure there's people that are way, way up there too. We can read how many milligrams there are in a product by looking at the food label, but we also tend to add a lot of sodium and salt to our food. And a perfect example of that is, when you're boiling pasta water, you add salt to it, and then you're creating a higher level of salt in your diet. So a way to reduce that is maybe sprinkle some dried parsley or oregano in there for flavor if you want something in with your pasta in the water like that, and try to cut out the sodium. So think of ways that you can sub out salt and add these flavors. I don't cook it with salt anymore at all, really, because I've found ways to add them in. So try to look at that. I also wanted to give you the approximate equivalent amounts of different forms of herbs, because I thought that might be a question the group might have. As a point of context, when using dried versus fresh herbs, this slide's going to give you those conversions. So if you have a recipe that calls for dried or fresh herbs, the conversions are as follows. 1 tablespoon of finely cut herbs is equivalent to 1 teaspoon of crumbled dried herbs, and 1/4 to 1/2 teaspoon of ground dried herbs. So if the recipe calls for dried herbs and you want to convert it, you could use this chart to do that. And I will gladly send you this slide out with a follow-up so that you have that conversion to use. Okay, so adding spices is important too, the time for which you add it into a dish. So that's another thing to keep in mind when you're cooking, is it really can influence the flavor. In the second picture here, I added thyme, rosemary, and sage, and they're being added to boiling broth and vegetables. And these are they're considered heartier herbs. And some fresh herbs like basil and parsley are better off being added right at the end of cooking, because you don't want to get them that hot right through the more leafy type herbs, so they'll get wilty and they'll lose their flavor. The general rule of thumb is to always follow the recipe if you have one when adding them. However, if you're adding herbs just on your own, do the more fragile ones like I mentioned at the end, so that they're not losing flavor, but you can put the heartier ones in a little bit earlier. Here's it really requires the proper timing. Like I said, you don't want to let it lose flavor. Prolonged heating can cause flavor and aroma loss to some herbs. Delicate herbs can be added a minute or 2 before the end, like I said, and heartier herbs can be added about 20 minutes. So you can go 20 minutes ahead. Breads and batters may require you to add herbs in the early part of the cooking process, and that's fine too. Again, follow that recipe for the best recommendations. So what are those delicate herbs that we were talking about that we want to add? Remember at the end in the last 2 minutes, examples of those would be basil, chives, cilantro, dill leaves, parsley, marjoram, and mint. So they're the more delicate herbs. And then the more plentiful ones would include dill seeds, rosemary, tarragon, and thyme that you could add, that 20-minute area. I did also want to mention the difference between spices versus herbs. They're really those two words are used interchangeably, but spices are from the bark of the plant. So that would include things like cinnamon, roots such as ginger, onions, garlic, the buds of saffron and cloves, and the seeds of mustards, poppy, sesame, the berry black pepper, or the fruit allspice, paprika, or tropical plants and trees. Herbs, on the other hand, are more leafy, like parsley, sage, and thyme, for example. So if you're wondering if it's a spice or an herb, it's the difference between the bark and the leaf. All right, as promised, I'm going to talk a little bit about prepping fall vegetables. And it really can be a little bit tricky in the fall. Some of those fall vegetables, like butternut squash, they're a little tricky, right? They're big, they're round, they're hard. Pumpkins, same thing. And when we're cooking them, we really don't want to injure ourselves. They have thick skins, so it's hard to get the knife through them. So let's talk a little bit, and I will share the recipe, like I said, for the project here that I'm going to show you on how to prepare it. But I just wanted to give you some pointers on how to maybe cook some of those vegetables that you might not be accustomed to cooking that are healthy for us. You might want to give a try. So with the squash preparation, this is an example of a butternut squash, as you can see there on the right in the picture. You want to wash and dry the squash, and it's really important to wash and dry all fruits and vegetables, no matter what the season is. Even ones like butternut squash that has the thick outer skin, you can take a vegetable brush and wash it with that. If it's got a tougher skin, for like potatoes or butternut squash, to get it really clean. But remember, if you're cutting into a vegetable, the knife is going to go through the dirty skin on the outside and into the clean part that you're going to eat. So that's why it's important to always clean the outside of the fruit or vegetable before you eat it. And you just need really cool water. Like I said, you can use a vegetable brush. You just really want to get the dirt off of it with the water. In this suggestion, for example, it says that after you wash it, you should cut the butternut squash at the neck, which is the short end there, and peel it with a veggie peeler. And that's not always easy. I don't know if you've ever tried to peel a butternut squash or not, but if you're not comfortable with it, I'm going to give you another method that you can use. I'm personally not comfortable with it. I've tried it, but if you're not comfortable with it, like I said, I'll give you another way. After you peel, as recommended here, you should cut the squash in halves down to their center and into 4/4 pieces, and then remove the seeds with a spoon. From here, you can continue to dice or slice the squash to meet your needs. So this form is using the vegetable peeler, which again, there's a perfectly fine way to do it if that's what you're comfortable with, but it's just really sometimes hard with that really thick skin of the butternut squash. Excuse me. So here's a variation on that. And for my purposes, like I said, I'm a little bit of a wimp. I don't like it's too hard to peel it for me. So I cut the end of the very end where the stem is off of the butternut squash, and I slice them lengthwise because that was the easier way to do it. Again, be really careful. And then I topped them when they were open. I topped the opening with some from olive oil on them. And I roasted them at 400 degrees in the oven that's shown here. And I roasted them for 55 minutes. And this method, I'm going to give you the recipe, like I said, for the soup I'm making in this recipe, but I'm just using this as an example to show you, and it'll be described in that method. This picture shows the squash after roasting it, and you can see it's, a little bubbly. It's a lot more tender. So it's going to be a lot easier to deal with than that hard peeling process of trying to do it. Excuse me. What I started doing here is I started scooping. It's really easy to do once it's so roasted and tender. I started scooping out the pulp of it. I scooped out, prior to this, I scooped out the seeds So I'm just taking the pulp out here. So it's really a lot easier to work with than what I would have been dealing with the peel situation. And then what I did was I added the scoops into the soup because it's nice and easy to do. And then you'll see when I send you the recipe, I do take to make it a nice smooth soup. And I like to use a submergent blender to make it all even. Another way that you can use the butternut squash after it's roasted is by taking a paring knife. And you can see here, I'm taking the paring knife and I'm just pulling the skin back. And then you can go ahead and chop it in, as shown here in the bottom. You can go ahead and chop it into little cubes and put it into the soup that way, if that's more preferable to you. But it's nice to manipulate it this way because it's really easy, it's soft and tender, and you can use it this way. And it doesn't just have to be for this recipe that you roast butternut squash this way. After it's been, roasted, it's a lot easier to cut through it, like shown here. And you can really think of creative ways to add it into other dishes, like macaroni and cheese, for instance. If you're trying to get a little bit more veggies into the kids, again, try to have them be involved in the cooking. But if they're not involved in the cooking and you want to try to color it up a little bit, give a little more nutrients, you can mix the softened butternut squash in there and make it a little bit sweeter, and it gives it a nice flavor. So that's another way to use a butternut squash. Once again, here is the survey, the evaluation survey, if you would be so kind to take that, if you haven't already, I very, very much appreciate that. And here's the wrap up. Picking vegetables and fruits that are in season will really give you healthy options. And I hope that I brought that across to you tonight. Trying to eat local and fresh while getting plenty of nutrients in your diet is important. Eating seasonally, like I said, can be much more cost effective because you're buying things that are plentiful, and it lets you enjoy what makes you healthy during that season. And, it's going to give you those advantages during the season of the things that we need to keep us healthy, like, healthy immunity or cooling us off, protecting us from the sun, as examples. Eating seasonally doesn't have to be difficult, and it's really does let you taste the flavor of the season. So I hope that you will all take the opportunity to taste the flavor of the season and go ahead and try that local seasonal eating. Oh, I lost my screen, sorry. Oh, no, it went all the way to the end. I only had one more slide left too. All right, so here's my contact information, and you're welcome to reach out to me. I do want to put another plug in. We have, like I said, we have the What's the Catch, New Jersey Seafood and Healthy Living. It's based on New Jersey seafood and what we're able to enjoy here. If you're interested in joining us for next week, you can see that our website is there, and I'll put that in the chat in a minute. So if you want to go to our website, down at the bottom under coming events, it has a list of program events. Also coming up is a lunch and learn on the 28th of October that is going to feature ways to add fruits and vegetables into your diet. So if you want to join us for those, please go to the website.